Episode 19, Revelation, chapter 8. So Revelation is the one book in the Bible that says, read me and be blessed. So blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near. So let's do a quick recap. In Revelation 4, John is caught up into heaven in the Spirit, and he sees God on his throne, surrounded by 24 thrones occupied by the 24 elders. In front of God's throne stands 4 living creatures, covered all over with eyes front and back. The first living creature has a face like a lion, the second like an ox, the third a man, and the fourth like a flying eagle. This reminded us of how God arranged Moses and the 12 tribes in the desert of their encampments under their 4 banners: the Lion of Judah, the Man of Reuben, the Ox of Ephraim, and the Eagle of Dan. And here's the tabernacle in the middle. In Revelation 5, we went over how in biblical times one could lose their inheritance, lose their estate, and how a qualified kinsman redeemer could recover it for them. We also learned that through the sin of Adam, we lost our estate, living in the paradise of God. So the title deed of earth is still in the right hand of God, waiting for a worthy kinsman redeemer to recover Eden. Jesus takes the scroll from the Father. He is worthy to be our kinsman redeemer. In Daniel 9, we read of the 70th week of the Great Tribulation. The rapture happens before the 70th week begins. The first 3.5 years of the 70th week are false peace with Israel. Then the abomination of desolation happens, and the false peace is shattered when the Antichrist sets himself up as God in the third temple. So this is the 69th week, and then there's this interval here where Christ is crucified, the temple is burned down by the Romans in 70 AD, and this interval has lasted for 2,000 plus years already. And then the rapture happens, and then once the Christians and the Gentiles are taken out of this world, the Christian Gentiles, then the 70th week of Daniel will happen, of which in the middle is the abomination of desolation. But then there's the second coming and 1,000 years of peace. So in Revelation chapter 6, we are still with John's vision. We are still in heaven with the throne, the elders, and the living creatures all still in view. The scene is still the same, but the manifestations now move earthward. The rapture's happened, and Jesus prepares to open the first of the 7 seals, which heralds the start of convulsions on earth. In all these seals of judgment, the actions go out from heaven and proceed from the enthroned powers on high. In Revelation 7, we recall that after the massive destruction of the 6 seals, it's as though there's a pause in God's judgment while he seals 144,000 Jewish evangelists from the 12 tribes of Israel with a visible distinguishing mark on their forehead. Then John sees a multitude standing, waving palm fronds. Those are the ones left behind that refused the mark of the beast and died for Jesus. They're not the 144,000 because they're a great multitude. So let's dive into Revelation chapter 8. The 7th seal is a prelude to the 7 trumpets. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for half an hour. So this is where we are now. We did the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the martyrs under the altar, the shakings of the earth, then the 144,000 sealed, and the multitude with the palms, and here we are here in the 7th, and the 7th seal is a doozy. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. So the breaking of the 7th seal is so momentous that is preceded by 30 minutes of silence in heaven. Can you imagine how terrifying that must be? After the cacophony and terrors of the first 6 seals, suddenly there is absolute and utter silence. It must feel like the quiet in the eye of a hurricane, where you know the Holocaust will resume, but for now there's an eerie silence, a deathly stillness, and you wait in awful expectation, poised and ready to run, to hide. At the breaking of the first 4 seals, a voice like thunder was heard. At the breaking of the 5th seal, there was a great cry from beneath the altar in heaven, and when the 6th seal was broken, the earth quaked and shook violently. But now, at the beginning of the opening of the 7th seal, not a sound is heard, not a voice, not a movement, no motion, no wind blows, no leaves fall, no waves crash. All heaven is also silent, breathless and motionless. Saints and angels hush their songs of praise. They stand still, silent and waiting. Psalm 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted on earth." God is a jealous God. Silence for about half an hour. 30 minutes is not a long time, but anyone who has watched and waited for a pot to boil knows how long 5 minutes is. The moments of suspense seem to stretch our time, and this is 6 times longer, an agonizing 30 minutes compounded by the awful silence. Some wise guy said, silence for 30 minutes, that proves there are no women in heaven. So this is the 7th seal, and it alone opens up 7 trumpets of woe, of destruction. So when we see what the 7th seal is, then we will know why heaven was shocked into silence for 30 minutes. They see what awful horror the 7th seal contains. When the 7th seal is broken, we see that it's not just one seal, but instead it's 7 times worse than the first 6 seals here. They were individuals. This 7th seal is another 7 catastrophes. So this one seal is 7 trumpets of justice. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Now the silence is broken and the action resumes. 7 angels appear that are of a particular rank and distinction. Not all angels are created equal. God, like any good CEO, organizes his angels with authority, rank, dignity, and special office to administer and take care of both heaven and earth. In Ephesians 6, Paul speaks of dominions and principalities and powers among celestial beings. Daniel speaks of chief princes. Paul and Jude refer to archangels. Ezekiel talks of cherubim. Isaiah talks of seraphim. And Jesus talks of those that are always before the throne of God. In Matthew, Jesus says, "Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, children, for I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven." So these angels are always standing before the throne of God. Whereas some angels only come before God at appointed times. These are the harvest angels. Remember, Satan was a created being made by God. And in Job 1, now there was a day when the servants of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. Why was Satan there? Because he was an angel. He was Lucifer, the angel of light. He's a created being made by God. Thus we get a glimpse of the order and organization of heavenly beings, where each has his own prescribed sphere and office. Their ranks rise in a hierarchy from the lowest class of angel up to the highest archangels, standing in the immediate presence of God. How wonderful that must be. These archangels execute God's command. The book of Enoch in chapter 20 says the following about the holy angels. Uriel, who presides over... Now, this book of Enoch is talking about holy archangels. Uriel, who presides over clamor and terror. Raphael, who presides over the spirits of men. Raguel, who inflicts punishment on the world and on its leaders. Michael, who commands the nations. Sorakiel, who presides over the children of the men who transgress. And Gabriel, who presides over paradise and over the cherubim. So there are many different classes of angels. To them were given 7 trumpets, and now 7 angels present themselves before his throne, standing in the awesome power and glory of the presence of God, waiting for his commands. These angels must be the highest and mightiest of all created beings, and they are given 7 trumpets. In ancient times, God was very specific about the use of trumpets. He gave clear directions for their use. Trumpets proclaimed the great festivals. Trumpets were related to royal announcements. Trumpets announced the start of war, and trumpets were connected to the overthrow of the enemies. So some important trumpet sounds are a long one-note trumpet to call the people to order and get their attention. The short 3-note trumpet to call the people to worship, and the staccato 9-note trumpet to call the people to war. So you get their attention to come and worship or to go to war. Revelation 8, chapter 8, verse 3. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. So before the 7 angels can sound their trumpets, another angel appears. This being is very different to all other angels. He has a golden censer, an implement belonging to the Holy of Holies and used only by the high priest. This would indicate that this angel is our great high priest in heaven, Jesus, the Son of God. The tabernacle and later the temple had 2 altars, so don't confuse them. As you enter the structure, so this is the structure, as you enter the structure, the first thing you encounter is the brazen altar where the sacrifice of blood was shed, and then there's a bowl where you wash yourself before entering the tabernacle or temple itself. So once you enter, on the table on the right was the showbread, and on the left is the menorah and lampstand with 7 lamps, and these little cups that hold the flames, they call the lamps, and the whole thing is called the lampstand. Moving forward, there's the veil in front of the golden altar. So here's the golden altar where they burned incense, and then there's a veil across here hiding the Holy of Holies. And behind the veil is the Ark of the Covenant with its mercy seat. So now the golden altar was before the veil, because you could only enter the Holy of Holies once a year, and then only by the high priest, and then only once he was purified. So entering the Holy of Holies took great ceremony and lots of preparation. So this is the altar of the blood sacrifice of animals, and this is the altar of incense where they burnt incense. Yet the golden altar had to be tended to 3 times a day. Thus it was well before the veil, outside of the Holy of Holies. So in this case, the other angel was given a golden censer and much incense. So we understand that he was not outside of this in the sacrifice altar, but inside at the temple golden altar. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Incense throughout the Old Testament represents prayers, and as the perfumed aroma rises, so the prayers arise up to God. The incense was a specific formula and only used in the tabernacle and temple. You could not formulate it yourself and use it in your home. In fact, you are told not to. This specific incense was reserved only for God. This angel offers the prayers of all the saints and renders them as a sweet, sweet aroma before God. The incense is not given instead of the prayers. It is given to the prayers and with the prayers and for the prayers, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. Such an office is nowhere in the scriptures assigned to angels proper, but is everywhere assigned to our Lord Jesus Christ, the great high priest. Ephesians 5 says, and walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. So you might ask, why are the prayers of the saints in heaven being presented to God now, at this time, just before the 7 trumpets sound? Why? Because when prayers are to be answered, this is a good time for God to remember them. You get prayers from praying parents, prayers from praying brothers and sisters and fellow Christians, prayers from all those who were raptured but whose unredeemed loved ones have been left behind. Now the prayers of the saints, when they are still on the earth, are brought before God. Nor are the prayers ignored. They are the sweet smell of incense ascending before God. God hears our every prayer and sees our every tear. Psalm 56, David says, you number my wanderings, put my tears into your bottle. But for those for whom there were no prayer, there's no salvation, no piety, no holiness, just the coming, firing revelations of vengeance and justice. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightning, and an earthquake. So this fire he takes it out of the altar and throws it to earth. Fire is the great consumer and destroyer of the wicked, including pastors and leaders who have falsely misled their flocks. They too will face God's wrath. When the wicked and ungodly were offered true salvation, they despised it, refused it, made light of it, mocked it as nonsense. So out of the very altar of sacrifice comes their damnation. That same incense of fire that wafted a sweet aroma to God is now turned towards earth and kindles a hellfire on unbelievers and threw it to earth. Now Jesus is answering the prayers of the fifth seal, the prayers of the martyrs for vengeance. Jesus, the Jehovah angel himself, initiates the coming climax of the day of wrath. The unbelievers emerging from the sixth seal thought the last and the worst had come, but it was only a foretaste of the greater calamities to come. Luke 12, Jesus said, I came to send fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. Do you suppose that I came to give peace on earth? I tell you, not at all, but rather division. For from now on, 5 in one house will be divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. So this phrase is repeated 4 times in the book of Revelation. Lots of noise and thundering and earthquakes. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. This preamble phrase is over. These mighty angels stand ready with their warning trumpets. Their soundings would not be haphazard, but are executed in a defined, prearranged, orderly manner. They know what must be done and are ready to do their duty. We forget that God in his administration organizes his angels to care for his created cosmos, and that the affairs of men and nations are much more under the influence of angels than we suppose. And now these solemn archangels prepare to wind up the affairs of a doomed world as tasked to them by God. First trumpet, the vegetation is struck. The first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. Since hail and fire and a blood river happened in Egypt during the 10 plagues, so these phenomena will happen again, have happened again, and will happen again. Most recently, Sorcerer and Summerfield in Norway found blood-red snow on Mount St. Bernard in 1778. In August 1819, Captain Ross saw the mountains of Baffin's Bay covered with blood-red snow for 8 miles. Ramon found it on the Pyrenees, and even back in Roman times, Cicero reported to the Senate that it had rained blood. Recall that when the 6th seal was opened, that was the disasters on the earth, the 4 angels at the 4 corners of the earth holding back the winds were charged not to injure the earth nor the trees until God sealed his 144,000 Jewish evangelists. Now, with the sealing complete, God intends to repeat this hail with blood wonder, but with the addition of dreadful fire. 1/3 of the trees. When we breathe in, we take in oxygen into our lungs and expel carbon dioxide when we breathe out. Trees and vegetation take the carbon dioxide that we breathed out and turn it into oxygen. The vegetation then expels this oxygen, which we then breathe in. So our very breath of life is entirely dependent on abundant trees and vegetation. Yet this hailfire destroys 1/3 of all the trees and grasses. Without these trillions of trees making life-giving oxygen, the birds, bees, creepy-crawlies, wild animals, livestock, and humans will all die. This catastrophe alone will kill billions of life forms. And don't forget 1/3 of the fruit trees are destroyed, wiping out the fresh fruit that provides our bodies with vital nutrients and vitamins. And 1/3 of vegetation includes all our vegetables, eliminating another fresh food source of nutrients. So not only is our oxygen supply depleted, but so is a vast array of our regular food sources. The second trumpet, the sea struck. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and 1/3 of the sea became blood, and 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. So it's a great mountain burning with fire. Something like a great mountain, so not a real mountain. It's a massive aerial mountain, like a monstrous meteor rock, plummets from the sky and plunges into the sea. The Pacific Ocean covers 3/4 of the world's surface, and the Atlantic is another great part, and the Indian. So most of the earth's surface is covered with oceans, and now a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the living creatures in the sea died, eliminating a huge part of the remaining food source. And 1/3 of the ships which mine the oceans for seafood are destroyed, being sunk by monstrous waves or pushed ashore by tsunamis. Fishes are a wonderful gift from God to mankind. They were the principal food of Jesus and were part of some of his most marvelous miracles. But now, in punishment for rejecting the Son of God, 1/3 of the fishes of the sea are destroyed. Truly, you don't want to get in front of an angry Father God. Prophet Hosea says, "Therefore the land will mourn, and everyone who dwells there will waste away with the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. Even the fish of the sea will be taken away." Prophet Zephaniah says, "I will consume man and beast. I will consume the birds of the heavens, the fish of the sea." These prophets. So the third trumpet, the waters struck. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on 1/3 of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. 1/3 of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter. So this great star is not a massive burning meteor like the one before, but more of a thin comet with a long tail. And as it sweeps across the sky, its tail poisons the rivers and lakes and fountains and wells. In March 1823, on one of the Aleutian Islands, a great volcanic explosion turned glaciers and rivers the color of beer, and it was so bitter that it was unfit to drink. The prophet Jeremiah says, "And the Lord said, because they have forsaken my law, which I set before them, and have not obeyed my voice, nor walked according to it, but they have walked according to the dictates of their own hearts, and after the Baals, which their father taught them. Therefore thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will feed them, this people, with wormwood, and give them water of gall to drink." God is a jealous God. Don't mess around with Baals. Name of the star is wormwood. In Russian and Ukrainian, the word Chernobyl means black weed and is a member of the wormwood family. The city of Chernobyl was so named after the abundance of this weed growing in and around the city. Wormwood is a bitter-tasting herb known for being an ingredient in absinthe. While it isn't hallucinogenic, its plant compound, thujone, can be toxic and even fatal in large amounts. It was made bitter. The word absinthe in the Greek means undrinkable. The word is synonymous with sorrow, calamity, hemlock, bitterness, and poison. You can pause and read this if you want. Check these scriptures if you want to. There are 30 large rivers in the U.S. alone, 30 large rivers, made up of 100 principal rivers feeding them. Now 1/3 of the fresh water is destroyed, and the water is bitter or toxic. Without fresh water to drink, man and all living creatures can only survive for a few days, not weeks, days. So the fourth trumpet, the heaven struck. Then the fourth angel sounded, and 1/3 of the sun was struck, 1/3 of the moon, and 1/3 of the stars, so that 1/3 of them were darkened. 1/3 of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. It's a cosmic catastrophe, and now 1/3 of the cosmos is darkened. Jesus tells us in Luke 21, "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." While this may seem just a partial destruction, think of the wider implications. On earth, the source of light during the day and night is dimmed. Our heat source grows feeble. This impacts the ripening of fruits and harvests, what's left of them, and the cold fills the earth with perhaps a chilling mini ice age. Prophet Isaiah says, "Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with both wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he will destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of heaven and their constellation will not give their light, the sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine." And there are a lot more scriptures that foretell of this apocalypse. And Jesus himself tells of it in Matthew 24. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. So this fourth trumpet is quite terrifying. So at this stage of the tribulation, we have 1/3, this is the 4 trumpets, 1/3 of the oxygen of life-giving trees and vegetation is destroyed. 1/3 of all the sea creatures, seafood, and ships are destroyed. 1/3 of the fresh water turns bitter and is toxic and is undrinkable. And 1/3 of the heavens fall to earth, darkening and chilling the planet. And yet, these are still only the preliminaries. There's worse to come. These are 3 woes that come in chapter 9. Now we can understand why there was 30 minutes of silence in heaven, as heaven stood aghast at the enormity of the 7th seal. Remember, the 7th seal was all these 7 trumpets, of which there are 3 woes. When Jesus said, woe, 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 it meant utter obliteration. He said, woe, woe, woe to the city of Tyre, the main Phoenician city. And today, the city is obliterated. You can't, there's a new city that they built up on the hill, but the original city of Tyre is nothing. Verse 13, and I looked and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. If Tyre was wiped out because Jesus said, woe, woe, woe to Tyre, and now this woe, woe, woe is to the inhabitants of the entire earth. Wow. Because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. So we get this angel flying. Let me just go up like this. The word angel here is actually atos, meaning eagle, and it's used, the same word is used in these 3 areas. So if God can make Balaam's donkey speak, he can make an eagle cry in a loud voice. From his lofty perch on high, the eagle can see the cataclysms taking place. Woe, 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 3 woes for 3 more trumpets. If possible, even worse is to come. Isaiah 36 prophet says, and one cried to another and said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God of hosts. The whole earth is filled with his glory. Why holy, holy, holy? Because the Godhead is 3 persons, the Trinity. Why woe, woe, woe? These 3 woes are explained in Revelation 9, the next chapter. So at the end of each session, we're tracking the meaning of the images we are given. Chapter 1, we had these 3. Chapter 4, we had 1. Chapter 5, we had 3. Chapter 6, we had 1. Chapter 7, we had 1. And now in chapter 2, we actually have 2 more. The 7 angels, the highest and mightiest rank of angels, and 7 trumpets, where you have different sounds to alert and gather the people to worship or to war. So these are our 7 trumpets. We've had the green grass, 1/3 of the trees are burned up, 1/3 of the sea becomes blood, 1/3 of the waters turn bitter, 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars do not shine, and now the 3 woes start. And then the interesting thing is that these 2 are covered in chapter 9, and then there's this pause again, as it's almost like heaven takes a deep breath before launching into the 7th trumpet. So Revelation, we started with a blessing. I'm going to end with a blessing. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy. Blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near. End of episode 19. Please follow me to episode 20, chapter 9. God bless you.